Join us in the fight to restore liberty and American exceptionalism. Together, let's make the case that our charters of freedom are worth defending and honoring. Right here is where the great American experiment comes alive. Let's get to work.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, the first question to be asked here, the affirmative argument will be by Mr. Krauser. Question number one, should the 14th Amendment be used as justification for eliminating affirmative action?
The answer is absolutely yes. The text of the 14th Amendment provides that there is to be equal protection under the law. If I were to ask everybody here to stand up and ask those of you who are left-handed to sit down, and as a result of having you sit down, we are going to pay out all left-handers $10,000, and we are going to give you a place in the front of the line. Most of us in this room, even most of the left-handers, would say that's appalling, that's absurd. And that's right, it would be. But this is precisely what we're doing in America. We're looking at an individual, we're looking at a person's skin color, and we're deciding where they come from, what neighborhood do they live in, where are their parents from, and we're deciding to offer preferential treatment, not under the law, but because we believe it's simply a good idea without asking anything more with respect to what it is that's ultimately needed. What is needed in this country is equality under the law. Equal application, that is, the government cannot choose who it will protect and who it will harass. It must be consistent across the board. Again, the 14th Amendment states this very clearly. No, nor shall any state deny any person the equal protection of the law. The best way, ladies and gentlemen, to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. It seems to me that goes without saying. Now, there are a number of provisions that various state constitutions throughout America have adopted. I want to read one of them, which is very similar to the one in Arizona as well as Michigan. Here is what it says. Any public college or university, community college or school district shall not discriminate against any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. Does that provide equal protection under the law? Without question. But there are groups out there, groups like the Coalition to Defend Affirmative Action, that would not want to uphold these principles. They would want to shut down these particular provisions in the state constitutions and knock down the provisions in our U.S. Constitution. Why, you ask? Well, the answer is very simple. They are racist. They are biased. They are prejudiced. That's why. It's not the individuals that stand in opposition to affirmative action who are the racist. It simply is not the case. We're not the individuals looking at the color of one's skin. We're looking at the application of law and how government is applying it. They do not believe in our Constitution. They do not believe in the plain language of the Constitution and of the rule of law, and what it means to be free, and what it means to experience liberty, and what it means to engage in hard work. That's the problem here. Look at our document, this Constitution. The founders got it right. Those who drafted the amendment, that is the 14th Amendment, ultimately got it right. And I will tell you this, Congressman John Bingham, he was one of the primary sponsors of the 14th Amendment, and he made it rather clear that if in fact he would have known that affirmative policies would have been implemented as a result of the plain language of the 14th Amendment, he would have never sponsored it. It's not in agreement, and it does not coincide with the original intent. What I'm suggesting, ladies and gentlemen, is that we quit the racist nonsense of suggesting that blacks cannot compete. Quit the racist nonsense that Asians are smarter than whites and blacks are dumber than whites. Quit the racist nonsense. Michael Jackson perhaps said it best, I don't want to live my life being a color. But those who would advocate affirmative action insist on individuals living their lives being a color, whether it's black, white, Indian, Hispanic, it does not matter. It's all about the color of one's skin. And I think what I would like to see is for Mr. Weisser explain how denying millions of people equality under the law coincides with our Constitution. I believe in MLK, Martin Luther King's dream of judging an individual on the basis of the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And I'd like to hear Mr. Weisser tell us how the Constitution supports inequality under the law.
Mr. Weisser, 1 minute, negative cross-examination.
Mr. Krauser, Did you notice that there was a handicap ramp on the way into the auditorium tonight?
I do now.
And do you believe that that is an unfair protection?
No.
So you do agree that it makes sense that our government might work to equalize imbalances if people aren't necessarily of a position of being in full health, let's say.
Have no problem with that.
And then you don't, but you do not equate that with the social injustice that we see in our society today?
Absolutely not.
Those were my questions.
Okay, then. Now, Mr. Weisser, you have a negative argument for 5 minutes.
Well, I'd like to point out, as I did with the ADA, which is the American with Disabilities Act, that our country has empowered itself to try to create balances where an injustice exists. Now, it is all well and good for us in the 21st century to act as if our current society is colorless and classless, but that's a lie. And to ignore the injustices that are built into our society and continue to perpetuate a system of injustice doesn't actually eliminate those injustices. It empowers the people who would use those injustices unfairly. Now, I cannot say that equal protection means that everybody gets a pony. What I can say is that equal protection, which is one of the parts of the 14th Amendment, is designed to make sure that all citizens have access to both their privileges and their immunities. Immunities being in cases such as the rights of the accused. Privileges being the positive rights that we all have. And I'm going to insist again, if you look at incarceration rates, education rates, it's very clear, the economic rates, that our society is not just. To try to create an equal balance, in much the same way as we have that ramp to let people get up on stage, or we have facilities to let the blind student hear their material, or the deaf student see their material. We have balances set into our society to try to create a just society for all citizens. The people who already have power already enjoy the privileges that many of us will never experience. But as long as we reinforce that injustice with unjust laws that do not create equality, then we will not have an equal society. I do not suggest that the idea of affirmative action is something that people who are in the majority would embrace. The people in the majority, as John Stuart Mill once pointed out, the tyranny of the majority, do not benefit necessarily from advancing the oppressed. The power has, as Malcolm X said, rarely given itself up. It has to be asked for, it has to be taken. We have to create some sort of an equal playing field in America if we ever expect to have something other than the plutocrats and the racists which currently run our society.
Thank you. Mr. Krauser, affirmative cross-examination, 1 minute.
Mr. Weisser, do you agree with me that it would be tyranny to undermine the plain language of the Constitution?
Yes, sir.
And if the Constitution says equal protection under the law, would it not be tyranny for those in authority, the majority in authority, to determine who in fact should receive benefits and entitlements and who should not?
No, sir. I say that that is the essence of the Constitution, and that's also the history of judicial review.
Do you believe that individuals who are black or Hispanic should be given additional points upon application to a university because they may have come from a disadvantaged background?
I think that that has to do with a case-by-case basis. I cannot say
Are there any circumstances where you would do that?
Yes.
Are there any circumstances where you would provide more points to a white individual who came from a disadvantaged background?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us where the dividing line is then.
When I say affirmative action, I'm talking about a basis for equality of access and opportunity, whether it be based on skin color or based on economic injustice.
So is your position that of diversity?
Yes.
Diversity, what does that mean?
Diversity means that, I'm out of time.
Yes, you
Oh, diversity means that our society is supposed to incorporate all, not just the grinning people who feel like they're on top.
Okay. Affirmative rebuttal. This will be Mr. Krauser. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. The fact of the matter is that Mr. Weisser believes that injustice can ultimately be the fact that injustice may exist can be ultimately removed by what it is that the government can do. And we've talked about this before, market forces versus government intervention. Government is supposed to ensure that the playing field is level. That is, that there is equality in the way that the government treats the individual. Not to make sure that because an individual comes from a disadvantaged background that he's provided additional points upon application. The choice here is between following the text of the 14th Amendment, which states that the states may deny any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the law. That's what the plain language says, and what it is that we have Mr. Weisser doing is engaging in a good idea, bad idea analysis, not a constitutional, unconstitutional analysis. That's the problem here. Let's be honest with what's going on here, ladies and gentlemen. In many elite schools throughout the country, African Americans receive an extra 230 SAT points for being what? African American. Hispanics receive an extra 185 SAT points for being what? Hispanic. And athletes receive an additional 200 SAT points for being what? For being athletes. Asian Americans receive what? They don't receive anything. They see 50 points being deleted from their application for being what? Asian. That doesn't sound like equal protection under law to me. So the question is this. Let's look at the reality. We've seen it in the academic world. What about the NBA? We want to talk about inequality from the perspective of Mr. Weisser. What about the NBA? The fact of the matter is that 80% of the players are black. You can go to the NFL. 65% of the players are black. So NBA, we've got 80% of the players that are black. 65% of the players in the NFL are black. Blacks are among the highest paid players and have the highest number of awards for excellence in both of those sports. Blacks who trace their ancestry back to Africa, including many black Americans, hold more than 95% of the top times in sprinting. My question is, when is Mr. Weisser going to advocate filing a lawsuit against the NFL, against the NBA, for a lack of equality, for the white individuals who aren't able to be represented proportionately? If we're going to talk about equality, let's talk about consistency. By contrast, blacks are only 2% of the players in the NHL. More than that, Nobel Peace Prize winners. Jews make up 1% of the population, yet win 39% of those awards. When are we going to file a suit against the entity that gives out the Nobel Peace Prize to ensure equality? Asians score better on the SAT. Men are 82% more likely to be struck by lightning than women. I'm wondering, the lightning god must have something against men. Perhaps we should petition the lightning god for a bit more diversity, whatever that means. We're talking about diversity. What is diversity? It's racist to claim that because an individual is black, that he brings certain things to the table that a Hispanic individual could not bring to the table, or that a white individual could not bring to the table. To suggest that, well, a black individual is more likely to grow up in the inner city, therefore we're going to offer him more points upon application to the university, is racist. There's no other way to say it. It is racist to suggest that a black individual brings those experiences from the inner city, but a white person couldn't possibly bring those experiences from the inner city, is racist. See, I happen to believe, Mr. Weisser, that blacks are just as smart as whites. And that is offensive to most minorities that I've dealt with throughout my life to tell them that they can't compete. I won't stand on the side of saying that they can't compete, that they need more points upon the application process. They can compete. They want to compete. The irony of this conversation is that you have very, very successful individuals throughout the world, but more specifically in America, who are Hispanic, who are black. In fact, the most powerful individual in the world, the President of the United States, is black. Don't sit here and suggest that because of the color of one's skin, we must offer some sort of advantage. It's not consistent with the text of the Constitution. It's not consistent with the idea of freedom. And government must treat individuals equally. For them to suggest that the only way that they make the playing field even is because they feel sorry for certain individuals and have to offer entitlements or benefits. It's simply un-American and it's racist. That is ultimately what it comes down to. Thank you.
Mr. Weisser, you have 4 minutes for a negative rebuttal.
To hear Mr. Krauser describe my position, it reminds me of a short story by the noted science fiction writer Kurt Vonnegut, Harrison Bergeron, which also gets taught at junior high. And in that novel, or in that short story, able-bodied individuals are handicapped to make them equal to lesser individuals. I'm not sure if you felt that that was my position. I will reassure you that that's a piece of science fiction. That is not my position. Our Constitution starts out with a preamble, and as I pointed out, its first mandate is to form a more perfect union. The second is to establish justice. Now, when we talk about establishing justice, that means that those who have unfair disadvantages would not have justice if left in their situation. Like the lady with the walker over here, without an ADA approved ramp so she could get up here, she would have been left to her disadvantage. Sorry, lady, that's your situation. That's not the America that I think of when I think of a country that provides for the common defense and promotes the general welfare. The third mandate of our government is to create domestic tranquility. Now, Mr. Krauser points out that...
Krauser.
There's no N in my last name either. Mr. Krauser points out that there are individuals in professional sports of color. He uses these anecdotes as if a few examples, let's say a few hundred examples on a nationwide scale, mean that all is equal. When in fact, we're at a junior high again. I know that statistically 1 out of every 20,000 kids who starts out in the junior high program even has a chance to make it to the pros. So those anecdotal examples don't necessarily show that we have equality, especially when you think of the fact that when it comes to black men in America, as Mr. Krauser wants to make this point, 1 out of 3 has been adult males has had to deal with being arrested. Now, is that a reflection of their character, or is that a reflection of the injustice that we have in our society that does not see law as colored lines? Now, I believe that the idea of affirmative action, on its face, is what you'd call a warm and fuzzy idea. It sounds like a nice thing. So it's easy to belittle, it's easy to dismiss. It's a cute thing. It's about as cute as the Statue of Liberty, isn't it? Where we talk about bringing the poor and the tired, the huddled masses who are yearning to breathe free, and give them a chance. Get them into the country, get an equal footing. I do not think that our country was designed to sit and watch social injustices not be solved. The idea of affirmative action is in keeping with the equal protection of the 14th Amendment. It is in keeping with the basic principles of the preamble of the Constitution, and I reject Mr. Krauser's assertion that this is just about race.